In 2024, Iran launched an attack on Israel. In 2020, General Qasem Soleimani was assassinated. In 2015, the nuclear deal was negotiated. In 2012, U.S. sanctions intensified. And every time the same question emerges: how did we get here? Ask yourself this: when did this tension actually begin? Was it in 2024, with the 2015 nuclear deal, or during the 1979 Iranian Revolution? No, every few years we see similar headlines appear again. Iran launches drones, Israel retaliates, the United States deploys aircraft carriers to the region. And while millions watch the news, they search for answers. Was it a coup, a revolution, or a balance of power that was never truly resolved? The answer goes back 70 years. To understand why the United States, Israel, and Iran are trapped in a cycle of tension, we need to go back to the 1950s. There is a deeper layer beyond ideological conflict, a story about how power systems evolve. During the 1950s and 1960s, Iran and the United States did not see each other as enemies. In fact, Iran was one of Washington's closest allies in the Middle East. Under Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, Iran was firmly part of the Western Bloc. But this partnership did not emerge without tension. In 1951, Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh made a critical move. He nationalized Iran's oil industry. This ended the concession of the British oil company Anglo-Iranian Oil Company. For Washington and London, this was unacceptable. In the context of the Cold War, control over energy resources held strategic importance comparable to military power. Mossadegh's policy was seen as a potential step toward the Soviet sphere of influence. With the support of the CIA and Britain's MI6, Mossadegh was removed from power in a coup. The Shah consolidated his rule, and Iran became even more closely aligned with the Western Bloc. This coup left a deep scar in Iran's political memory. It shaped the country's future relationship with the United States and planted the seeds of the revolution that would erupt 26 years later. At the time, the world was divided into two competing blocs. The United States pursued a strategy of containing the spread of communism led by the Soviet Union. Iran shared a border with the Soviet Union. This made it geostrategically critical. Under the Shah, Iran received U.S. military assistance, modernized using oil revenues, and supported Western interests in the region. In 1948, the State of Israel was established. Following its creation, Israel fought several wars with neighboring Arab states. These conflicts shaped Israel's security doctrine, maintaining military superiority against external threats. Israel also emerged as a pro-Western actor within the system. There is a notable point here. Before 1979, Iran and Israel were not enemies. Behind the scenes, trade and intelligence cooperation existed between them. Both countries viewed Arab nationalism as a shared threat. Nationalist movements led by figures such as Gamal Abdel Nasser in Egypt and the Ba'ath Party in Iraq unsettled both Israel and Iran. Soviet influence was also a common concern. The regional structure looked like this: Iran, a pro-Western monarchy, Israel, a pro-Western state, United States, the external guarantor. This balance collapsed in 1979. In 1979, a revolution erupted in Iran. Under the leadership of Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, the Islamic Republic was declared. Khomeini was no longer just a cleric returning from exile. He had become the leader of a nation, and he had built that influence through recorded sermons distributed on cassette tapes, reaching millions. The moment Khomeini stepped off the plane, he transformed not only Iran's political system, but also the balance of power across the Middle East. The Shah was forced to leave the country. The new government adopted three core positions: reject Western influence, end the American military presence, and oppose Israel ideologically. That same year, the U.S. Embassy hostage crisis erupted in Tehran. 52 American diplomats were held captive for 444 days. The incident permanently severed diplomatic relations between Washington and Tehran. After 1979, the United States was labeled the Great Satan in Iranian rhetoric. Israel was described as an illegitimate entity. Iran began providing financial and logistical support to anti-Israel armed groups. In Lebanon, the organization Hezbollah emerged with Iranian backing during this period. The regional balance of the Cold War had been shaken. Iran was no longer part of the system shaped by the United States. It had become a challenger to that system. After the revolution, Iran promoted a different vision for the region: independence from Western intervention, greater Islamic solidarity, and support for the Palestinian cause. This vision clashed directly with the U.S. strategy in the Middle East. For Washington, two priorities remained central: the security of Israel and the uninterrupted flow of oil. Two competing regional systems had emerged, and neither could find a path to compromise. These three actors rarely fought each other directly. Instead, conflict unfolded through proxy mechanisms. Why avoid direct war? Because both sides understand that a direct confrontation could trigger a regional catastrophe. Instead, proxy networks emerged: Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, and militias in Syria. 1 year after the revolution, Iraq invaded Iran. Saddam Hussein feared the spread of Iran's revolutionary ideology. The United States supported Iraq in order to contain Iran's influence. The war lasted 8 years. Millions died. Yet the borders barely changed. Iran was weakened, but it did not collapse. In 2003, the United States invaded Iraq. Saddam Hussein was removed from power. This created a major power vacuum in the region. One of Iran's biggest regional rivals had disappeared. As a result, Iran expanded its influence in Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon. It supported Shia groups in Iraq. The Assad government in Syria became a key Iranian ally. Hezbollah in Lebanon consolidated its power. Iran's influence was now extending toward Israel's borders. Israel viewed this as a new strategic threat. Iran's regional expansion did not alarm only Israel. It also triggered concern among Gulf monarchies. A rivalry between Saudi Arabia and Iran intensified. Yemen, Bahrain, and Iraq became proxy arenas. Saudi Arabia intervened militarily against Houthi rebels in Yemen, while Iran provided support to the Houthis. As a result, the regional power structure now included three main actors: Iran, Israel, the Gulf states. In the 2000s, Iran's nuclear program became a central global issue. Iran expanded its uranium enrichment capacity. Western governments and Israel feared the program could evolve into nuclear weapons development. In 2010, the UN Security Council imposed sanctions on Iran. In 2015, the JCPOA, Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, was signed. Iran agreed to limit its nuclear activities. In return, Western sanctions were eased. But in 2018, the United States withdrew from the agreement and reinstated sanctions. Iran then began gradually expanding its nuclear program again. After the end of the Cold War, Russia remained largely in the background in the Middle East. But in the 2000s, Moscow gradually returned. Especially after 2015, during the Syrian civil war, Russia and Iran supported the same government and operated in parallel on the battlefield. This relationship was not an ideological alliance. It was a balance of interests. Russia wanted to limit American influence. Iran sought strategic space against international isolation. This added another dimension to the equation. It was no longer just the US-Israel-Iran triangle. It had also become part of great power competition. In the Middle East, there has never been a single dominant power. While North America is protected by oceans, the Middle East has historically been a crossroads of empires. This has made the region both wealthy and unstable. Iran views itself as a civilizational state with historical continuity from the Persian Empire to the present. Its regional influence is seen as an extension of this identity. Israel's strategy, on the other hand, has always been security-centered. As a small state surrounded by potential threats, constant vigilance became a priority. Deterrence forms the core of Israel's strategy. For the United States, the key objectives have been regional stability, the uninterrupted flow of oil, and the security of its allies. Russia, meanwhile, seeks to balance Western influence. Its bases in Syria, access to the Mediterranean, and regional presence serve as strategic bargaining tools. These interests sometimes overlap and sometimes collide. When Iran expands its influence, Israel perceives it as a threat. When Israel launches military operations, Iran interprets them as aggression. When the United States supports Israel, Iran views it as hostility. When Russia aligns with Iran in certain areas, the U.S. sees it as part of global competition. The result is not simply a series of temporary crises. It is a structural tension. No actor has enough power to dominate the system alone. But none of them are willing to step back either. Why does this tension keep returning? Because none of the actors are willing to abandon their core strategic approach. For Iran, regional influence is not optional. Groups it supports in Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, and Yemen form a defensive network. Through them, Iran balances Israeli and American pressure indirectly. This reduces the risk of direct confrontation. But it also reinforces Israel's threat perception. Israel sees these networks as a direct security threat. As Iranian-backed militias move closer to its borders, the sense of danger increases. Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, and Iranian-backed militias in Syria. Israel regularly conducts military operations to contain them, but these operations do not produce lasting results because the underlying structure remains unchanged. For the United States, the calculation is more complex. Stay or withdraw. If it withdraws, Israel's security could become uncertain. If it stays, it must continue costly military deployments, remain involved in regional conflicts, and face domestic political debate. For now, the United States has chosen to remain, and that decision keeps the tension alive. For Russia, however, this tension creates opportunity. It provides leverage in negotiations with the West and justification for maintaining influence in the region. For Moscow, the continuation of tension is not necessarily a problem. In some ways, it is an advantage. The events and conflicts of recent decades are not just temporary crises. They are the result of an unresolved power structure. No side fully wins, but none are willing to accept defeat. This creates a permanent tension. As long as the structure remains unchanged, the actors will remain the same. The military moves we see today may appear sudden, but they are not. They are the result of multiple historical layers overlapping. The regional balance inherited from the Cold War, the rupture created by the 1979 Iranian Revolution, the power vacuum after the 2003 invasion of Iraq, regional rivalries, and great power competition. This is not just a conflict. It is a balance of power constantly under pressure, ready to explode at any moment. The actors may change, but the structure beneath them remains largely the same. And until that structure changes, the tension will continue.